Boxing fans, the sport just hit the rewind button in the biggest way possible. After years of rumors, wishful thinking, and it'll never happen conversations, Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao are officially set to run it back. Netflix has confirmed that Mayweather and Pacquiao will step into the ring for a professional rematch on Saturday, September 19, more than 10 years after their original showdown. And this isn't just any rematch, it's Maypac 2, live from the Sphere in Las Vegas, streamed to the entire world. On its own, that's huge, but what makes this even more interesting is how different the landscape is now compared to 2015. Back then, you had traditional pay-per-view, cable providers, and closed-circuit setups. Today, the rematch between two of boxing's greatest names is being packaged as a global streaming event on Netflix, inside one of the most futuristic venues on the planet. It's boxing history meeting the streaming era in the most literal way possible. For anyone who remembers the first fight, you know how big this is. Mayweather vs. Pacquiao 1 on May 2, 2015 was billed as the fight of the century. The hype was unlike anything the sport had seen in decades. Years of negotiations, arguments over drug testing, purse splits, TV rights, network rivalries, it all finally ended with those two walking out under the lights in Las Vegas. Financially, the event was a monster. It generated record-breaking revenue and did around 4.6 million pay-per-view buys, numbers we still reference when we talk about super fights. But the reaction was complicated. Floyd Mayweather won a clear, unanimous decision. He did what he always does, defensively brilliant, composed, making Pacquiao miss and pay. Hardcore boxing fans appreciated the masterclass, but a lot of casual fans who wanted wild exchanges and a definitive knockout walked away feeling like something was missing. The fight was historic, but not everyone felt completely satisfied. Now, here we are, over a decade later, and Mayweather and Pacquiao are preparing to share the ring again. Only this time, they aren't at the peak of their powers. When that opening bell rings for Maypac 2, Mayweather will be 49 years old. Pacquiao will be turning 48 in December. These are not prime years for welterweights. These are legends operating in the final chapters of their time in the ring. Floyd's last official professional bout came in 2017, when he stopped UFC star Conor McGregor and walked away with a pristine 50-0 record, including 27 knockouts. Since then, he stayed visible through exhibitions, sparring some younger names and celebrity opponents in no-lose situations that kept his brand alive without risking that perfect record. Pacquiao, on the other hand, fought at a high level longer. He compiled a professional record of 62 wins, 3 draws, and 8 losses, with 39 of those wins coming by knockout. His final pro fight to date was a loss to Yordan Ugas in 2021, a night that showed flashes of the old Pacquiao speed and aggression, but also underlined that time catches up to everyone. The rematch won't have a championship belt on the line. It's not about the pound-for-pound conversation anymore. Instead, it's being framed as something different, a celebration of an era that shaped modern boxing, brought massive global audiences back to the sport, and turned Mayweather and Pacquiao into household names beyond hardcore fight circles. And then there's the venue. The Sphere isn't just another arena in Vegas. It's a 21st century spectacle, a high-tech dome wrapped in LED screens built specifically to create immersive experiences. It seats about 18,600 fans, and until now, it's been known for eye-popping concerts and live productions that mix music with cinematic visuals. Maypac 2 will be the first professional boxing match ever held at the Sphere, and that alone is a statement. Imagine that environment on fight night. You're not just looking at a ring in the middle of an arena. You're surrounded by a curved, towering screen capable of showing Mayweather's defensive highlights from the De La Hoya fight the one moment, Pacquiao's thunderous knockouts of Barrera and Hatton the next, all in enormous, crystal-clear detail. The ring walks could feel like movie intros, with the entire dome reacting to each fighter's theme and identity. Promoters know that even if the in-ring action is slower than in their primes, the atmosphere around it can feel bigger than ever. That's where this starts to look less like a traditional fight card and more like a hybrid between a championship bout and a live documentary. It's not just two aging fighters going at it. It's an event that invites fans to relive an era and watch its two biggest figures share a stage again. But one of the most surprising details in all of this didn't come from Netflix, the Sphere, or the fighters themselves. It came from Jake Paul. Jake Paul, who has become one of the most polarizing figures in modern boxing, decided to weigh in on the Mayweather news. And instead of trashing it, calling it a scam, or comparing it to what he's doing, as many expected he might, he did the exact opposite. On X, he posted a message that caught a lot of people off guard with how supportive it was. He said he loves seeing Canelo and Crawford on Netflix. He loves that Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios are headlining on DAZN. He loves that Manny and Money Mayweather are back for a professional fight. Then he added that he hopes ESPN returns to big-time boxing soon too. His main point was simple: all of this is good for growing the sport, and that growth should be the focus. Coming from Jake Paul, that matters way more than it might seem at first glance. This is someone who built his boxing career on YouTube fame, crossover appeal, and the idea that you don't have to come from the traditional amateur or Olympic pipeline to generate massive attention and money in the ring. He's had his own high-profile events, his own partnerships, and his own critics. For him to step back and say, look, Canelo on Netflix, Ryan on DAZN, Manny and Floyd on Netflix, hopefully ESPN back in, it's all good for boxing. That's a sign of where the sport has moved. It used to be that one broadcaster, one network, or one pay-per-view distributor controlled the biggest fights. Now you've got major platforms competing and crossing over: Netflix, DAZN, and still looming giants like ESPN. Each one is grabbing pieces of the schedule, stacking their own events, and trying to capture both die-hard fans and casual viewers. Netflix has made their intentions very clear. First came the mega events like Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson in 2024, then another blockbuster with Paul's clash with Anthony Joshua in late 2025. Those weren't just random experiments, they were testing grounds, proof that Netflix could handle live global traffic, in-event production, and the hype cycle around big fights. Now, bringing in Mayweather Jr is the natural next step. It's Netflix planting its flag and saying, we're not just dabbling in boxing, we're one of the main homes for it now.
DAZN, meanwhile, continues to deliver its own big nights, especially with fighters like Canelo, Ryan Garcia, and others. And even if ESPN has slowed down at times, Jake Paul's comment about hoping they get back in soon shows that people inside and outside the game still see them as a key piece of the ecosystem. So what does Mayweather Jr really mean for fans in this new era? On one level, it's pure nostalgia. You've got two legends stepping back into the ring, giving everyone who lived through that first build-up a chance to feel that electricity again, even if the stakes are a little different now. If you were too young in 2015 to really appreciate the build-up, this might be your first chance to experience Mayweather vs. Pacquiao as a live event you can follow in real time, instead of catching highlights on YouTube the next day. On another level, it's a test of how much fans value names versus competitive prime. Nobody's pretending these are the same versions of Floyd and Manny that once ruled the welterweight division. They're older, they're slower, they're not going to be throwing 100 punches around or dancing around the ring like they did in their early 30s. Some critics are already wondering whether the rematch can deliver the kind of intensity or urgency that fans expect from a fight between such iconic rivals. But the energy around the announcement shows something important. Boxing's emotional pull is still incredibly strong. When people heard Mayweather vs. Pacquiao rematch on Netflix live from the Sphere, they didn't ignore it. It became an instant talking point on sports shows, timelines, and group chats. Love it or hate it, you react to it. That in itself is power. And that's exactly what Jake Paul is pointing to with his reaction. From his perspective, from Canelo and Bud on Netflix, to Ryan and Barrios on DAZN, to Manny and Mayweather back in a pro fight, to hopefully ESPN getting back into the mix, all of it builds a bigger tent. Each platform promos harder, tells more backstories, invests more money, and reaches new corners of the world. For a sport that has always had gatekeeping problems and fractured organizations, this kind of broader exposure might be one of the few ways it can keep growing. For Mayweather and Pacquiao personally, this rematch is something different from what we've seen before. In 2015, they were fighting for the right to be named the best of their era. Now they're headlining as living legends in a sport that has moved into a new phase. Younger champions are holding the belts. New rivalries are bubbling. Social media stars have carved out their own lane. Yet, more than 10 years after their fight of the century, their names are still powerful enough to anchor a global streaming super event. In that sense, Pacquiao is less about rewriting history and more about revisiting it. It's about taking that night in 2015 and projecting it onto a new screen, literally in the case of the Sphere, and a new platform in Netflix. It's about reminding fans why these two were the faces of boxing for so long, while also acknowledging that the sport is evolving past them and into something more fragmented, more digital, and more global. Will the rematch be a tactical chess match, another careful display of Mayweather's defense and Manny's angles, just at a slower pace? Will someone surprise us with an early knockdown or a late rally that becomes the one thing people remember from the fight? That's impossible to know right now. What we do know is that the event around it will be enormous, hyper-produced, and designed to feel like a moment you have to see live. If you zoom out, that's really what this is, a moment where boxing's past, present, and future are all colliding. The past is Mayweather and Pacquiao, two legends bringing their rivalry back into the ring one last time. The present is Netflix, DAZN, and a new class of fighters and personalities, including someone like Jake Paul, who operates in a completely different lane but is still tied into the sport's biggest moves. The future is what happens next. How many more platforms jump in? How many more super fights become global streaming events? And how long boxing can keep turning nostalgia, rivalry, and technology into something people want to watch. With Mayweather vs. Pacquiao 2 officially set at the Sphere, and with even someone as disruptive as Jake Paul cheering it on as a win for the sport, one thing is clear: boxing is not fading quietly into the background. It's changing, stretching across platforms, leaning into spectacle, and finding new ways to bring old legends and new audiences together. Whether you'll be tuning in for the fight itself, the production around it, or just to see if these two can still pull off something memorable in their late 40s, Pacquiao is already doing what it was meant to do, getting the world talking about boxing all over again.